Let's set the scene. It's the 2nd of April 2011 in Welkom, a mining town in the Free State. We're at the Van X residence. Michael is getting ready for the night. He put on his blue jeans and his grey-blue t-shirt. He had recently gotten a job as an intern as an electrician at a gold mine, and he had just withdrawn his very first 1,000 Rand from his very first salary. He's got a warm personality and a winning smile, and most importantly, he has a date with a mysterious young brunette. The future is looking bright for this 23-year-old man. He had met this woman on a dating site called To Go, and now they were chatting on Mixit. Remember Mixit? Well, if you don't know what Mixit is, it was a messaging app, just like WhatsApp, between 2005 and it shut down in 2015. The only difference is you'd have to log into the app to send and receive messages. Anyway, Michael is super excited about this date and he's telling his boss about it. And there's one strange detail that comes up. This woman wanted to meet in a graveyard. Naturally, Michael's boss had his concerns and he said, this is a red flag. But Michael was also a little bit thrown off about it, but he thought to himself, like, it's fine. They'll meet there and then they'll go somewhere from there. That Saturday evening, Michael has dinner with his parents. He had a great relationship with his parents. His mom loved him dearly and he'd become her right-hand man over the years. Michael tells his mom he's taking this girl out to the movies. He says his goodbyes and he drives off. His mom notices that he drives in the opposite direction that he said he was going in, but she doesn't think that much of it and just continues with the evening. The following morning, a security guard found a car which seemed to be abandoned in a taxi rank. The keys were in the ignition, the car was unlocked, and there was blood on the door handle. Security alerted the police. The police ran the number plates through the computer system and found who the car belonged to and the address of the person. The police ended up at the Van X residence, Michael's parents' home. Nas, Michael's father, and Henriette, Michael's mother, were stunned to find out that Michael's car had been abandoned. They hadn't seen him since the previous night, but they assumed that he came home late and left for work early in the morning. Henriette ran to the flatlet that Michael stayed at. She got to his room and noticed that it appeared untouched. Michael hadn't been home at all. They soon learned that Michael hadn't shown up for work either. He was officially missing. Panicked, they took off with the police to the taxi rank. As they reached the taxi rank, they noticed there's a man in Michael's car about to drive off. That's it. This must be the man that has something to do with Michael's disappearance, is what they thought. Nas jumps out of the car, shouting, "What the hell do you think you are doing?" He pulls the man out of the car and says, "Where is my son?" Police calm Nas down and begin to question the suspect. The man was clearly drunk and he had one wooden leg. While police are questioning the drunken man, Michael's sister and her husband show up at the scene. They notice that while Michael's parents are distracted, there's a group of men trying to steal their bakkie. They yell, "Dad, that bastard is getting into your bakkie." Henriette doesn't miss a beat and fearlessly confronts them. They say they accidentally got into the wrong car and they took off down the street. A mess, a circus, just pure chaos. The police then took the drunken man and the Van X down to the police station for further questioning. During questioning, the drunk explained that it was actually his friend Tabu that wanted him to pick up the car and drive it to a petrol station. So, police tracked down Tabu. It was at the police station that Henriette was told to meet Michael's boss at the house. She took off, and when she got there, all he said was, "The graveyard." Henriette and his older sister rushed over to the graveyard. They hoped that they would find him alive still and just injured at worst. But that morning, a grim discovery was made by a maintenance worker at the graveyard. He showed his boss, Ephraim, the scene he'd come across. A fresh pool of blood in the sand. There were blood smears along the paving. splashes of blood on the grass, and what looked like a piece of material soaked in blood. Henriette and her daughter rushed into the graveyard shouting, "Michael! Michael!" She started talking to Ephraim when mid-sentence she noticed something on the ground. It was Michael's blue-gray t-shirt soaked in blood. She lifted the material and started sobbing for her son. Henriette, now fueled by anxiety and worry for Michael, started searching the grounds with Ephraim, but there was no sign of Michael. At this time, Nas is still at the police station, and the police inform him that they found a bloody t-shirt that matched Michael's at the cemetery. Police headed over to the graveyard with the drunken man and Tabu. They found Tabu. They go over and they are convinced that they are responsible for what happened to Michael. By the time police arrived at the scene with their suspects, they were fed up with what they believed were lies. Police pulled the drunken man out of the car and Tabu followed. Police brought him onto the scene and shouted, "Tell us where you murdered him." They grab the drunk by the neck, shoves his face in the t-shirt and says, "Where is the body?" The drunken man gave in. He said, "I lied about Tabu. I'm sorry. All I wanted was to use the car." He did in fact try to steal the car, but police determined that he wasn't involved in Michael's disappearance at all. Hours and hours went by with police going over the scene and still nothing. Until Fani du Plessis arrived on the scene with his sniffer dog from the K9 unit, Zander. Not long after their arrival, Zander started digging. Nothing could prepare police for what they were about to witness. A pair of blood-soaked blue jeans on top of a pale, disfigured male body was revealed in a shallow grave. The body was naked and had been dismembered. The head, the right arm along with the hand, and the left foot was missing. Both legs were amputated at the knee. The left hand had cuts in it, showing defense wounds. Police couldn't be sure that it was Michael until they found the head of the body, and they didn't want the family to see the body in this condition. But Nas, once he heard that a discovery was made, he pushed past the police and approached the shallow grave. And just upon seeing the body, he knew it was his son. It was Michael. The police continued the investigation. They checked Michael's call logs and dialed the last number in his phone. The first 2 days after the murder, the phone on the other end was turned off. But on the third, a woman answered. The young brunette from the dating site called To Go, Shanae van Heerden. My name is Tanisha Kaiser, and welcome to my True Crime YouTube channel. Shanae van Heerden was born in Welkom in 1991 to parents who were in a loveless marriage. By the time Shanae's mother was pregnant, she was ready to leave her marriage and felt that this pregnancy kept her trapped with a man that she didn't love. Shanae would grow up with a mother that regretted having her. Shanae's mother would tear up her baby pictures and cry herself to sleep. She would tell Shanae that her Barbie dolls would come alive at night, which obviously terrified her, especially because she was afraid of the dark. And she would tie up her Barbie dolls and put tape over their mouths. None of this was easy for Shanae growing up, feeling lonely, and to cope with it, she created imaginary friends. Not most kids, but like a lot of kids do. Her parents noticed that she was talking to the air and asked her, "Who are you talking to?" She was like, "My friend, Norman and Azazel." This concerned them a little bit, because Azazel, according to the Christian Bible, is a half goat demon type thing. This guy. Yeah. So naturally, they're a little bit worried being Christians in the Christian church, and child has an imaginary friend, this half goat, half demon man thing, you know? Okay. So they're a little bit concerned. After this reveal, the family attended church as normal. But this Sunday, something a little bit different happened. Shanae was called up to the front of the church in front of the entire congregation by the pastor, who was also her grandfather. He said to her, her demons needed to be exorcised. They thought that she was possessed and proceeded to perform an exorcism, which I can just imagine would be quite traumatic for anyone, especially at 8 years old. After years of her parents being in a dysfunctional marriage, Shanae's mother, Charmaine, finally divorced. She took her 3 kids and she moved out. She ended up in a string of abusive relationships, not just towards her, but the children as well. Shanae's father remarried, and she would go back and forth between the 2 houses. Shanae began self-mutilating by cutting her arms. She had become very mentally unwell at this stage. At the age of 10, she attempted to stab her stepmother. Her father and stepmother chalked this up to her having difficulties as a teenager. They did have her put on mood stabilizers when she was in primary school, but she didn't stay on them for very long. Which it would have been great if she did stay on the medication, you know? I'm always just thinking like, oh, what could have been prevented, you know, what she could have become. Shanae started a hobby with, it's either her stepfather or her father, one of the two, a fatherly figure. I had conflicting sources there. They started a hobby together where they would go hunting, buck and hares, and hares, this thing. It was her job to skin the animals. She described it as being thrilling. She was very, very excited by this activity. She said the only thing that compared was when she was self-harming. She would collect dead animals or skin the pet rats that they would feed to their snakes. She couldn't get enough of it. When she was 12 years old, she started hanging out with older kids and started doing drugs, sniffing benzene and taking ecstasy. 12? 12? 12. That is so young. That is so young. She became sexually active at a very young age, which it's not healthy for like 12 years old, you're a child. One evening, she was out with some friends and she was under the influence. And this older man that she had become friends with and trusted took advantage of her and raped her. She never told anyone, but it seems like her sister might have known. But not getting justice for what happened seemed to worsen her mental state. When she was 15, her mother immigrated to New Zealand and she went to live with her father and stepmother full time. Her father and stepmother did their best to support her through her struggles, but it seemed like she never could find her feet and become stable. At 16 years old, she dropped out of school. But she went on to study art and graphic design. She moved in with her sister, and her father remembers feeling like things were finally turning around for her. She stopped hanging out with people that weren't any good for her. She stopped doing drugs and she became successful in her studies. She even got a job as a graphic designer and became a star employee. But what her father didn't know about Shanae is that her fantasies became more and more twisted. Her artwork portrayed faces with their mouths stitched closed, and one of her poems read, "I will tear off their faces to see the truth." These strange fantasies, paired with her obsession with skinning, was a recipe for disaster. In this time, she met a 22-year-old man who was very interested in the satanic religion. But Shanae, she was like, no, I'm not into that. I'm into voodoo and Wicca. Shanae's relationship with this man was allegedly abusive physically and emotionally, but that soon came to an end. After that, she was at a party and she's introduced to a man named Martins van der Merwe. He was 24 years old, born and raised in Welkom. He had a different upbringing than Shanae, but he had his own demons that he was facing. He had a photographic memory and was a top achiever in his class. He was always ahead of his peers in maths and chess. His academics were on a high, but his social life was pretty much non-existent. At age 10, he was still wetting the bed. And you know what they say about bedwetting, right? Okay, if you don't know, serial killers are known to bedwet well after the normal age, which on average is around 7 years old. It is within accumulation of a whole bunch of other things as well, but that is one of the telltale signs that something mentally is not well with a child. Might not be well in the future either. When he was 6 years old, Martin started having hallucinations, and he had a hard time telling the difference between reality and these hallucinations. He recalled his first hallucination being a dragon that appeared and told him he had been given to the world as a gift, and one day he would return to take it back. He said this made him feel very special and like he'd been chosen for something more than just an ordinary life. And he spent the rest of his life chasing this feeling. His family dogs would maul stray cats, and it was his responsibility to clean them up, which I can only imagine would have some sort of lasting impact on you as a child. One day he was cleaning up the yard and a stray cat came into the yard. He picked the cat up and broke its neck. No reason, no rhyme or reason, just broke its neck. He was a miserable and reclusive child and mostly found pleasure in playing endless computer games. Not that there's anything wrong with playing computer games, but that's just what he did. At 14 years old, Martins was diagnosed with schizophrenia. They found him to be delusional and he was swayed by his hallucinations. He showed signs of disorganized thinking and speech. He was put on a maximum dose of medication, which eased most of the symptoms at times, except for one, bouts of aggression. Martin spent a lot of his teen years in and out of hospitals with psychotic episodes, emotional withdrawal, and mental instability. Shanae was 20 when she met Martins and he was 24. The relationship moved fast. Not long after they met, they moved in together. They had different interests than other couples. They enjoyed watching Dexter. So Dexter, as far as I can pick up, is a show about this man who is a serial killer, but he only kills bad people. So something like that. But they were fascinated by how he could have this full-time job, normal life as a forensic technician, and lead a double life as a serial killer. The couple would imitate this. They joined a Bible study group, and behind closed doors, they were actually mutilating and sacrificing animals, especially cats. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they have a thing against cats. I don't know. At some point, the couple declared their love for each other by dipping rings in a small bucket of their blood. Of course, they only displayed this insanity in the confines of their own home. To other people, they seemed like a normal couple. I'm guessing just like Dexter. Shanae's relationship with her father remained close, and when she introduced her father to Martins, he invited them on a fishing trip. Her family liked him. They described him as a nice chap, intelligent, and a total gentleman. After some time together, mutilating and sacrificing cats, Shanae felt it was time to move on. She called an animal welfare organization to adopt a dog. As the woman was taking Shanae's details over the phone, Shanae couldn't bring herself to rescue a dog when she had every intention of killing, skinning, and mutilating the dog. Which you'd think, wow, she has some sort of conscience, whatever. She's has a little bit of empathy. This is when she decided to look for a human victim. The lovebirds spent hours researching what they could do to their victim and all the dark matters of humanity. This is when Shanae created a profile of herself on the dating website called To Go, a honey trap to lure her victim into her sick game. This brings us back to Saturday, the 2nd of April 2011. Shanae is patiently waiting in the graveyard for her prey. Michael hops out the car and enters the cemetery. He walks towards Shanae and notices something in the shadows. She's with someone. Before Michael can even realize what's happening, a knife is plunging into him. He tries to run away, but the evil woman takes a butcher's knife and starts stabbing him along with Martin's. He was stabbed a total of 33 times in just seconds. There was no way he could fight back. There Michael lay, took his last breaths, and passed away. Shanae and Martins dragged Michael's body 200 meters to the section of the graveyard where the trees line the cemetery. Shanae began to decapitate Michael's head. She then severed his right arm and cut both his legs at the knee. They then used their butcher's knife and kitchen knife to dig a shallow grave where they bury Michael's torso and body, or what's left of it, with a pair of blue jeans. They left his bloody t-shirt at the entranceway, making no real effort to cover up what they've done. They took the body parts that they removed back to the apartment. Late that night, they buried Michael's left foot and right arm in a grave where 2 dead cats were placed inside. The following day, Shanae stitched up Michael's mouth, a fantasy that she had had for years. Something she considered doing to Martins, but she loved him too much. Their sex life involved a lot of cutting, sometimes to a point where it was beyond the point of fun. She cut off Michael's ears and placed them in a bottle of water. She removed his eyes from his eye socket and also placed them in a separate bottle of water, and she put them both in the freezer, both bottles in the freezer. Next, she tore off the face so she could see the truth. She did this so precisely that one could confuse this with a real mask, is what was said. After she fulfilled her fantasy, finally, after years, she said she had a feeling of emptiness come over her. She got no kick out of it. She was disappointed after all the positive accounts that she'd read from serial killers. They all described such a rush of excitement, and she felt nothing. After the disturbing act the couple performed together, they decided to get engaged, bonded with a deadly secret. They invited her father to dinner, and he gladly gave his blessing. Obviously, her father doesn't know what's going on. Like, remember, they appear as this normal couple after just doing something really horrendous. Police, knowing that Shanae was most likely the last person to see Michael alive, hatched a plan to lure Shanae and Martins to the hospital. It works. From there, police transported them in separate vehicles back to their apartment. Shanae calmly and willingly walked police through the events that occurred the night that Michael was murdered. She didn't hide anything, and in fact, she seemed as if she was proud of what she'd done. Even though she knew what she did was wrong, she felt no sense of remorse whatsoever. She showed the officers the severed limbs in the grave that they had dug in their backyard along with the cats, his eyes and ears in the bottles of water, and more disturbingly, the mask of his face, which she had placed in a plastic bag and put in between the frozen veggies. Just something so disturbing and heinous displayed so casually. She was arrested along with Martins, and the trial was set for the following year. People were surprised when they saw this petite, young woman responsible for such a gruesome and heinous crime. They were expecting a monster. But this also shows us that the monsters are the people next door. It can be anyone. It's not necessarily the weird looking guy or weird looking girl. Like, she just looks like a normal woman, normal South African white woman. Nothing strange about her, nothing that screams, I perform rituals on cats and I would skin someone's face and sew the mouth shut. People were very, very surprised at who this turned out to be, who the killer turned out to be. The social worker who listened to the details of Shanae recounting what happened said there was absolutely no empathy, no remorse, just very matter of fact, like she was reading a story out of a book. Martins was tried separately. He, on the other hand, displayed a ton of emotion. While on trial in the courtroom, Martins looked directly at Michael's family and pleaded and begged for forgiveness. So he felt more remorse. I don't even know if I believe that, to be honest. I really don't know. I do feel like Shanae was the one that was in charge, and he was like an enabler. I know that's not the correct term to use. Oftentimes you get that happens in not just relationships, but these types of psychosexual relationships. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology. I need to study these things, but it does happen where one is the more dominant one and the other one is more submissive and will do anything to please the dominant one. Those are the words. Yes, this does happen. Anyway, but that obviously him begging and pleading didn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. He brutally murdered this man. So, sorry. So during the trial of Shanae, like I said, she showed absolutely no remorse, and Dr. Andre Labuschagne, if that name sounds familiar to you, I mentioned him in my first video, Boetie Boer, if you want to watch that. There's a link over there. But he testified he wrote a report on behalf of what? The investigative psychology unit. Yeah, the terminology is a lot for me sometimes, and this video is getting long. So Dr. Andre Labuschagne wrote that Shanae would best be handled as a serial killer, even though she only murdered one person thus far. So his reasoning for this is that psychologically motivated crimes are likely to be repeated. The same with the cats that she would mutilate and sacrifice. She would do that repeatedly. So this would have become part of a ritual for her. The taking of the body parts, of Michael's body parts, is also an indication that she might become a future serial killer, because this is seen as taking a trophy from the crime scene, which oftentimes serial killers do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a body part. It could be a driver's license, a purse, something that they used to murder the person, like stockings to strangle, or underwear, or anything to kind of remember the crime and crime scene by. So the fact that she did this, and I'm guessing also the the brutality of the crime, the fantasies and all those things. Those things don't just stop just because she murdered one person. It usually just escalates. So all these things basically show that she is likely to commit a crime in the future again, a crime to this extent in the future again. Her poor father. I mean, my heart goes out to the Van Eycks, obviously, but also Shanae's father. Like, he tried his whole life just to support her and help her. And he said, the daughter we know and love is not capable of these things. He described her as beautiful and full of life. He described his daughter as normal and how well her job was going as a graphic designer. He spoke about her commitment to Bible classes, which we know was all just for show and just part of her sick fantasy. Actually, I do feel sorry for her father. I feel like he was bamboozled, but that's what she wanted. She wanted everyone around her to think that she was normal and that they were a normal couple doing normal things, and to have this hidden other side. During the trial, Shanae was called a monster by the state advocate and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years, after which she will be reassessed, but it's unlikely that she'll ever get out because her chances of rehabilitation are so slim. When the judge read the sentence, Shanae had no reaction whatsoever. Martins was tried separately and was given a life sentence. He said, and I'm going to read this, "I thought I would experience something that made me understand death, and I was hoping Shanae would be happy with me if she had Van Eyck to cut up." I guess he saying he did it for love. I don't believe that. I do believe like he's the submissive one, she's the dominant one, and he would have done anything to make her happy. But I also think that there's something deep inside of him that also wanted to partake in this. She didn't force him into it. She was just the driver, I think, and he was in the passenger seat and he didn't want to get out. And that is the case of how Michael Van Eyck was taken from this world by a psychopathic couple. I hope as time has passed, the Van Eycks have been able to move forward somehow or find some peace in knowing that his murderers are behind bars. I hope that Martins and Shanae never gets out. I don't believe that she can be rehabilitated, and I think that Martins is very, very mentally unwell. It's not an excuse, but I don't think that he is mentally well. Neither Shanae, but I don't know, it just feels like something inherently evil about her. I hope Shanae's time in prison teaches us something. I don't know. I don't believe she can feel remorse. I think that she's a psychopath. I don't think that she can feel remorse. So I just hope that her time in prison is a bad time, Anyway, thank you for watching and listening. I will be uploading as soon as I can. I would love to say weekly, but I can't promise that. Life is just a little bit crazy right now. I do think that it is important to share these types of stories and just to also just keep yourself safe. Just remember, if you are meeting up with a stranger, to let someone know who they are, where you are going, meet in a public place, arm yourself as much as you can, because obviously we meet strangers all day, but sometimes there are people online that are there to hurt you. So just be careful, and just let someone know where you are. And once you're armed and you're ready, you can get out there because the world is your oyster. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.